Is there anything I can do or answer question-wise? Stuart, you already got your glasses on. Let's let this gentleman go first.
Sure, Scott. I often say that you couldn't pay me enough money to be a principal. I now have another job that you couldn't possibly pay me enough money to go out and try to explain it to those people out there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question, true or false, not trying to do a gotcha. The capital outlay that has to flow out to charter schools, it's probably only going to get worse or more, because right now, given the situation with our 3.9 reserves,
Yes.
we've gotten some waivers, and eventually those waivers are going to go away, and we're going to have to give them, the private companies that run these things, even some more money for capital.
Yeah.
So there was a change in the legislation, a couple of changes. So one happened the year before I got here, one happened right before I got here. So what they did was, all the way up until a few years ago, we never had to give them part of our local capital outlay funding. The legislators, what they started doing was they started taking PICO and allocating the money from PICO. And there for several years, they were actually allocating charter schools, which makes up a small portion of Florida, more money than they were allocating to us. There's two pots of money in PICO they allocate maintenance, and then they allocate new funding for new construction. We haven't had new construction for a number of years. This year we didn't even get the maintenance portion. Okay, but what they did do last year was they said, we're going to try to fund charter school capital outlay out of PICO, even though they're not funding us out of PICO anymore. And what they did was they set it to like a CPI, a consumer increase, and they set a base amount, and they said that each year that they're going to appropriate money to cover that base increase per student at the charter school level. However, it also says that at any time that it's not fully appropriated, the school districts must share their millage money to cover the difference. So as long as they continue to fund it out of PICO, they can't take it out of our local capital outlay. You guys, I'm sure some of you have probably been in this as long as I have, or longer, obviously. When charter schools started, it was sold, the concept was sold on, look, you take the total cost of educating a student, not just the FEFP and the operational, but you look at all the capital needs and everything that go along with that. And charters, they won't have a capital need because they're not building these big schools, so they can do this a lot less. Well, through time, that's eroded down to, now we need more capital, we need more capital, we need more capital. Now, I will say, they do, when you look at it, they don't get funded at a level per student than we do most of the time. They've gotten shorted in capital. But what they do get is they don't have any of the overhead that we're required to have at our district level. And we have to do a lot of services for them for that 5% that's really less than 2%.
Yeah. And they get to package the property and put it into a REIT and have the investors.
Exactly.
And the management company to run it.
Yeah. So,
That's true.
so the same people that are voting for the millages and stuff like that, they get that on the local level, but they keep putting the same people back into Tallahassee. And you try to talk to them, even teachers, and it's like talking to a rock. I'll tell them, I'll let them keep their gun.
I was in an executive session in Alachua County a number of years ago with our board, and we had a board member who was wanting to talk about economics and recovery, because it was 2012, 2013, and at the time they were projecting pretty much the break even or recovery in 2015, and the comment that I made to that gentleman was, I believe honestly that we're going to recover financially by 2015 in the state, but I don't know how long it will be before we recover politically, and we haven't yet. Yes, ma'am.
Just a question about, I attended a town hall meeting last week before, where our state representatives were there presenting all of their wonderful figures and graphs of how much they have increased their support and funding to education. I will be the first to admit that there are things that you said that are over my head. But I know that I have an expert here who's telling me that I need to believe all this because it's in your interest that I believe that. But we have people over here who are also saying, oh, we have all of these charts and we're the expert in this and we're doing this. And that leaves us in the middle where I've gotten to the point where personally, I'm not believing anybody anymore. You'll find what you want to find.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why when they came out this last year, I included the actual clip of the Stanford Tribune in my presentation, because what's being advertised and what's being touted by that group of people is not reality for a lot of school districts in our state of Florida.
I would certainly hope that you would come attend the next town hall meeting if they have and present that.
We are trying to go through our lobbyists to get some time to sit down with them. Our lobbyist has already told us that one of our people will probably completely cut us off as soon as we start, but that's okay. I'm prepared to go and talk with them. You know, part of the problem, whether, you know, let's talk a little political science here for a minute. Part of the problem is we only allow legislators to stick around for 8 years now. They go through a four-year term, they term out, they got to go. Well, a lot of the people that are there now that are involved were there 6 or 7 years ago, and they didn't see the cuts that we were getting back then. If I start talking about what they did in 2010, they're not going to see that. And if I go back to this sheet, this is always interesting to me. Let's see if we got it go. If I go back to this sheet right here, a lot of finance people talk about, when they talk about a lot of district people, when they talk about VSA, they go from here to here, and they say, "Whew, that's almost level." It's less than that 1.12% that I'm talking about. But our current legislators came in around here, and that's the number that they say, "Oh, you got to measure from here to here," and they will tell you, they will look you in the face and they'll believe what they're saying. They will tell you, "We're funding education more than it's ever been funded in the history of the state of Florida." And that's a true statement. It is true. But none of this has been adjusted for any kind of cost. No inflation number in this at all. So, yes, ma'am.
At our town hall meeting that we went to, our representative stated that the salary was going to go up because she was in charge of education. That was her job this year.
The one without a college degree.
Yes.
The one that was homeschooled. The one that I have to give a chance to, according
She
to
was
some
going
people.
to make certain that veteran teachers got the increase. And then I stayed and spoke with her for a very long time about the issues. And then she referred me to her two assistants, which I've been calling, who tried education for 2 years and they didn't like it at all. But this is the issue. It's the lack of communication, because the people in the audience are all, there for one reason, and we're there for education. And that is the most important thing that we can offer our society, is education. So I just don't understand why we're getting such a switch and bait routine.
We would like an opportunity to sit down with them outside of the town hall meeting, and the reason being is because there's no way I could pull that off in 3 minutes. It's hard for me to do it in 45. So that's the downside to the town hall. Plus, if I showed up with that message and they had their charts and I put my charts up, obviously I'm going direct conflict with what they're saying or what they've been told.
And I'm sorry I didn't attend the meeting, guys, but I hear what you're saying. I'm going to respect your opinions, because they're opinions. But this is the right number.
Yeah.
Okay? You've heard me talk about this. I'm sorry you can't, you just don't believe either side.
I didn't
These
say
are the numbers.
excuse me.
I'm sorry, I thought Charlene said
I did
that,
not
she
say
doesn't
I
believe
didn't
either
believe
side.
either
I
side.
don't believe it totally.
Okay.
The truth lies somewhere in the middle.
That is the number I've been
We can
talking about.
manipulate figures however we want, to show whatever we want, to support whatever we want.
Well, let me just follow up with this. These numbers come out of the FEFP reports from the Department of Education. I went back to 2003, 18 years, and pulled them directly from there. They're available on the internet site at Department of Education. You can pull them.
Anybody that believes that statement, like the whole, well, you gotta believe me, it's my opinion. No. These are the numbers. I've been going over these numbers. We have talked about these numbers. But don't believe it. It's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
By
I'm sorry, Stuart, I'm not
Sullivan
boring you
and
guys.
I have something totally different. Okay, so we could get off of that for a minute. I'm a community member.
Yes, ma'am.
That's why I'm here. And you mentioned the impact fee and you said I should talk to my county commissioner.
Yes, ma'am. It's
Okay,
been-
but you
it's-
didn't say, is this impact fee gonna increase, decrease, stay the same? What do you want it to do and what do you want them to do?
The impact fee is actually based on studies, and it's a lot of math, even over my head, with the way they do calculations. But we're only allowed to set that fee at what we can document through that study as what the cost of that fee. And we do that every 3 years. We are just coming off completing the last report, and it's actually a decrease. So our, seems to be received very well when we have conversations with our county commissioners for them approving it, but there have been times in the past where they've argued about not approving 100% or cutting it back. But it's because they rightfully believe that that's tied to growth, and they're afraid if it goes up too high, too fast, then it may slow growth down.
Well, I know it kept me from building a new house just this last summer
Right.
because it was high, but because I'm an ex-teacher, I realized the importance of it. It just was too high for my budget.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
And your neighbors are worried about them paying us retirements, how much money they're gonna pay us for retirement. So you're a good person, and we have the neighbors.
Stuart?
All right, talk about capital outlay money,
Yes, sir.
and that cannot be used for operating. But it seemed to me a few years back, the presentation by a former CFO was, we need to take some of our general fund, pay off some of our capital outlay in order to decrease our debt and save money in the long run. Now,
I can't speak to what that presentation was, obviously I wasn't here. And-
Right.
And I don't know that I would
is there
ever
anything that,
advise that.
okay,
But, yeah, and the statement is generally true, there's always exceptions. There are things that you can pay for out of the general fund and have reimbursed by the capital fund, and we've been maximizing that every year to try to support the general fund as much as possible. But looking at that graph of our financial statement, I would doubt anywhere in the last 5 years we had enough money to send to pay debt service out of the general fund. We didn't have it.
well, that's when we brought our fund balance ratio down to close to the 3%. Because before it was relatively high. Now, I asked you about some of the counties that are funded less than Lake.
Yes.
And so what I did was I went and looked at those counties and saw that in most cases, even though they're funded less than Lake, that their average teacher salary is higher and their fund balance is higher. So what are they doing that,
I know one of them is Marion County, and I know Marion County for a number of years has levied the additional millage for operational. That helps. I know Alachua County, we did that. We levied the additional millage for operational, and that helped keep our fund balance up. I don't remember all of them on the list, and I don't remember who all.
busting it out?
Okay, I don't remember who all has additional funding, but it could be a number of things. It could be class sizes, because our class size averages run actually lower than compliance requirements in our county. And obviously, that's something that costs us additional money to do. I'm not arguing for or against that. I'm just saying that it could be that they have tighter class sizes to the amendment. It could be the size of their district. It could be the demographics of their district. We have a very diverse district. We have a very long or tall district. So we spend probably more in transportation, which is underfunded.
But didn't they make an adjustment for transportation?
Not on miles. If you're a small school district, you may get that, what's the name of the funding? What's it?
Sparsity.
Sparsity. You get sparsity based on the number of high schools, And if you close one of your high schools, you lose more sparsity, maybe check it and figure out the formula. But anyway, but yeah, small school districts do get sparsity for things like that, but our district, we're too large and we have too many high schools to qualify. So there's a number of things that could impact that, But, what I would like to say, and not try to sound political or anything else, but, it's not on the expense side in our district. Obviously, it's the allocation of what we're getting funded from the state. You can't continue to provide a 1.12% increase for all expenditures and still survive and grow like we need to do, obviously. So, this district's done a pretty good job. Before me getting here, they plowed the field before I came to plant seeds, which is great. They did all the hard work. But there were some cuts in the prior years that were tough cuts.
Yeah, I know, but that first year with the new superintendent.
Yes. So,
And now we're 3 years in and we're still in the same
Sir,
place.
is the veteran teachers, in this particular issue, the veteran teachers who took a $6,000 hit with a promissory note that if you stayed with Lake County Schools for 20 years, you would have that jump of $6,000 in your step. That was taken away, and I know I missed that and a lot of my colleagues did, and many just said, the heck with it, I'm out of here. I don't think that that's fair to do something like that, but they put that $6,000 in the beginning teacher's salary. And when I look at the salary, it seems like that's where the money goes, and yet the veterans are the ones that are responsible to man the teams, to help the beginning teachers, to kind of put it all together and keep it all going. So, and you want to do that because I want them to stay. I don't want them to leave. But I see them leaving. And no matter what we try to do, they're still leaving.
we understand.
But we're still getting the hit. So every year for the rest of my life, I lose $6,000 plus the 3% that I'm not getting.
And I'm sure you're all aware of when statutes were changed to go to the performance-based pay,
Right.
it severely restricted anybody's ability to keep up with those schedules in the grandfather schedule. So for us to give a veteran teacher a $6,000 raise, we have to give 0.5% higher to highly qualified teachers on the performance-based pay, which
Unless you do it as a supplement.
which means that it becomes an affordability issue. Basically, the intent of the law was to stop the old step-style salary schedules. Yeah, and in Alachua County, we knew that was coming. We did everything we could to smooth out in between steps for a number of years. The intent was that we would make it to where it would be at least something tolerable when we could afford it. But I can't speak for what this district did years ago.
Our steps were only $300 too, so.
Lauren Ritchie did the article about new teachers coming in with the same amount of experience getting paid more than a veteran teacher.
Is that discrepancy still?
Yep,
And that's legal?
apparently so.
I can speak a little bit to that because obviously we had extensive conversations about that. And we put forth an MOU to you guys that never got responded to that would cap teachers coming in from bringing in experience and put some limitations on
But
that.
that doesn't,
So but when you're coming in as a new teacher, because when I first got here, what was being put out here is that there were veteran teachers that were making less than a brand new teacher coming in, which is not true either. Now there was a time where when they raised it to $40,000, the new teacher's salary, they did have to drag some teacher salaries up that were just a few years in, up to the $40,000 level to make sure that they were not below those
Yeah, I remember that.
those folks. So if you look, and I've got a handout for you guys in a little bit that shows the last 10 years of kind of where this group, different versions of it, has moved through and settlements that have occurred, and you can see where when it was in the 38 and change, it jumped to the 40,000, And then due to the COLA that we gave everybody last year, it went to the 40,400. So, and the whole game of all of this is that we're in the midst of the greatest teacher shortage we've ever had. Through a lot of hard work and grinding, we've managed to withstand the storm of that this past year, to where there's pockets, not as deep holes like we had in certain schools, but pockets of openings that are in some areas now. But so it's where do you put that funding? So if there is available funding, what I would caution is becoming divisive within your group of instructional, because at the end of the day, I hate it for what you guys have experienced. I truly do. And I'm not a big fan. But at the end of the day, as you guys retire, we have to have people to put into the workforse, and we've got to maintain the ones in the middle.
We just may never retire.
Good. That's probably a good thing, because we're going to need people in the classroom. So I get it, and if available recurring funding can come about, then that's where those discussions will be hashed out, and you guys can point where your priorities are. But you can't, 1 minute, 1 minute it's going to be your veteran teachers telling you this, but then the next minute your mid-career veterans, your middle of the career, and then your new teachers are going to be coming in and getting you in your ear also. And those numbers have shifted pretty well on where it used to be heavy veterans. But as we know, that's not the case anymore. And you look at this chart where the average work experience is 10.45 years experience. These people are just stopping in and out of the profession, and there's a tremendous amount of turnover. So I think we just got to be really wise. I mean, and we've tried to loosen some things up and help in some of these areas, by last year removing the cap off of the salary schedule for veteran teachers. That's a big deal. And especially if we can, if they'll start funding us appropriately, then there's going to be some ability for people to grow that top end in their high five, and that's a big deal. But the problem is we got to be funded appropriately to help everybody come up together. So I think that's the topic we're going to continue to discuss and look at. And Stuart's brought me examples of what other districts have done with some longevity supplements, and hey, those are great. If we've got some funding for you guys to express a priority for that's how you want available funding to go, then we can definitely have those discussions. Because we value the veteran teachers. You're right. They're bringing the new ones along. As much as we'd love to think they're popping right out of school and knowing what they're doing, or coming from an outside career like I did. No, I needed veteran teachers to help train me and help me understand what I need to do, whether it was from a curriculum standpoint or a classroom management survival standpoint. So I think there's a heavy value on all areas. We just, and I'm telling you, just as Mr. Ward said, I get it. I understand why you have a sense of distrust, but in the numbers that you see, because there's numbers flying everywhere, whether it's from a media outlet or whether it's from a town hall or a meeting like this. But what I'm telling you is these are educator numbers, and these are people that are in the trenches with it every day. And I challenge you guys to reach out to FEA, reach out to your people that you guys trust, and have them vet what we're putting forward. And the little chunks and pieces that we're looking for, unfortunately, it doesn't even put a dent towards a 1% in the things, in the needs that we have. So I get the struggle, but as educators, we've got to have a unified voice, and we can't, and I'm hoping, in talking with the board, and I'll get a little bit more in when I talk about executive session, but, I think you've got some folks that are in administrative positions at the district office, at the school level, that are of an educator heart and mindset, that they want what's best for all educators in this system. And I'm starting to see an alignment, and I'm hoping that we can continue that as we start to point towards Tallahassee and tell them something's got to give. And I'm hoping that, he's coming in here, I'm not sure how often it happens that, he's up here and he's ready to answer the difficult questions. So it's not good enough just to say that, as a conspiracy theory, we're not gonna, things are hidden, we don't know what, you've got him here and he's got the numbers and he's willing to answer any questions that you got. And that mode of transparency that your board wants and that your superintendent wants to offer is going to continue. And so all I can do is caution in the way we communicate and figure out a way for us to advocate somehow together.
I wanted to jump on that, and it may cause, I'm just giving one person's point of view here, it may cause us to need a caucus after this, but I'm going to go back to something you said. First, shame on me. I thought the MOU that had the cap on the new teacher salary was accepted. I mean, that to me seems like a no-brainer, but I'm sure we'll have a discussion about that. Because that's what I've told, people I've discussed with. We don't do that anymore. We have a memo of understanding. But going back to your point that I understand about the difficulties of the conversation between the different groups, I'm not even going to call them, caucuses, or the different groups, or different levels in our group. From where I'm coming from, and it goes back to another conversation we had last year, we want to fix the compression issue. All right. Now, to be clear, not pulling numbers out of the air, there's only going to be one pool of money. But again, we'll probably need a caucus. From where I was coming out of last year is that one pool of money, let's figure out something here, but we begin a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year process to address compensation, so we can turn to those people and say, we hear you, here's the reality. And this is going back, I'm a little unclear too, because I remember, I think I upset you and I didn't mean to. Someone told me the number was 12 million to 15 million. And you had done a lot of work, okay? But we never saw that, and you offered to bring it in, and I think somehow the priority shift. That's work that's worth discussing.
Absolutely.
And then you take that pool of money and you come up with the solution, and then it's our communication. I mean, I've got medium teachers, but not quite the veteran teachers yet, who get it. It's like, you're gonna be here. They're upset because they joined figuring, and they're decent people, but they didn't have the kind of ambition that I had. They wanted to hit this number and then they were done. That number went away. If I say to them, this is what we're getting because we're doing this and we're doing this over this amount of time, leave the communication to us on that, is what I'm saying. I hear you. I'm not saying you're wrong. And I'm not saying we would be 100% effective, because like I said, I've talked to some of these teachers about the people in Tallahassee, and they'd rather keep their guns. So, I think we want to talk, I think we acknowledge, I acknowledge the situation. I still would like to talk about it in the greater context of what we're going to come out with.
And here's, when we went back and did those calculations, and we're looking at, okay, what would it look like to climb this mountain, because, and get folks where they feel like they've right the wrong. And I can tell you when the shift and the focus changed was when we were at 3% fund balance, and realistically there wasn't going to be those millions of dollars. So all of that information is ready to pick up and move forward with it. But rather than have a bunch of conversation that we can't afford to remedy in that manner, then that's where that priority shifted. But I can tell you, you're right though, because the people, so not only have you had the experience on your end, but now the folks that are performance pay look really good coming in to a early career, heading into mid-career veteran person.
Or a calculus
And still-
teacher, you're golden if you're a
Yeah.
calculus teacher. You come in, you're gonna get that hard to place, and you're gonna go performance because we're never gonna fire a calculus teacher.
Well, but now you reach a point to where they've experienced what they've experienced. Now you've got new people that have come in, and all of a sudden they're not funding us adequately, and we're, on the 1% creep there that Scott showed us, and you can't even afford performance pay.
Mhm.
So now both ends and the entire gamut's getting stuck. So,
Am I being unrealistic from a numbers perspective?
no,
Okay, because
no.
I'm not cutting you off on this. I'd like to talk about it and understand the numbers, because I feel very confident on a community. Also, subjectively, the numbers are changing, because so many of my veteran teachers have gone to Georgia, have joined the private sector, because, unemployment is what, bupkis percent. They're getting offers from Scholastic, et cetera. So I'm not saying the number is significantly down, but it's going to be different. And that's going to impact, I could be opening a can of worms that in the end, we look at it and it's like, there's not enough money here to do anything significant. But I'd like to talk about it, because to turn to a large percentage of our population that feels screwed, and to say to them, we understand it's what happened previously, here's the plan to get the back. I think even the plan only got us to 80%. It's something that says, we hear you, we're doing something about it. I just don't know if I'm being unrealistic with the
No,
numbers.
and I will say also that I feel like we've added some additional asset
Yeah.
to the district too, to take a fresh look,
Yeah.
and pull on those numbers a little bit more.
And I totally get the reserves. I totally get where everything shifted on that, because it's right there too. And that was a gift that was handed to you from the previous level.
I was just gonna say,
See, I'm different.
I recently got asked to be on the Farm Finance Council for school boards. And I don't know if they'll follow through now, because they also asked me my opinion about how to fix salary issue in Florida, and I gave it to them. Very opinionated. But we have two major problems in the state of Florida with education. Two. Funding is just one. The other problem is the people that make decisions on how we do things has absolutely no idea about it.
You got it, you got it.
So a lot of what we're
That's it.
talking about, this convoluted system of pay set for teachers now, which also impacts all the other employees of the district, not just.
I'm gonna give you a warning. After that, I'm calling your parent.
Thank you, I'm sorry, you want my watch?
No.
But that is part of the other part of the problem.
It's huge.
All of the restrictions, all of the legislation, all of the stuff that they meet and talk about for months and tell, that there's 7 sheets of changes from the Department of Education that we have to address from this last session. And every one of those changes requires somebody at an administrative level to get involved and to do the work. So a lot of times when people from the outside say, why you got so much administration? We got so much red tape, we got so much new things happening, we got new rules. When I did this presentation in his school, I talked about how expensive all the performance requirements are in the state of Florida for educating our students, and how they've shifted that 3 major times since I've been involved. And every time they've had a major shift, it costs billions of dollars to retool education in the state of Florida. And that's money that was pulled out of classrooms that could have educated our students.
You are, I promise you, and one man's, you're singing to the choir in that one, and I'm not gonna cast aspersions, we look at what we got last year and how we got it, and given the way things are run, that meant a lot of, they didn't have this head to do that and that head to do that. I get that, and I want to acknowledge that. I still think they could do better. Don't get me started on regional directors or stuff like that, okay? But nonetheless, you're singing to the choir. I'm from New York. I've never experienced the mindset. Alan Hayes comes in, Senator Alan Hayes comes into my class every year, and we have great discussions, and it is mind-boggling, the mindset and and I like the guy, and what he doesn't know about education, and his positions on things, and they are still there. And I don't know how to get rid of them because I talk till I'm blue in the face.
I say that, I talk about that second problem because I'd like people to not just go in and ask for funding.
Yeah.
Because the current people that are there, when you talk funding, they hear tax increases.
Right.
They're adamantly opposed to any kind of tax increase.
Right.
So if you walk in and you say, we want to increase funding for education, you've already lost part of your people that are going to listen to you. But I also talk about, let go some of these restrictions that are so costly on our districts.
Yeah.
That would help us gain more efficiencies in areas and could help us fund some of these stuff.
And Scott, as new, coming in, again, one man's opinion, there are, this working relationship, despite the disagreements, this working relationship has come light years. There are efficiencies that we teachers, will say, hey, we can do that. That was never being harnessed before, that is being harnessed now. And I think that, I honestly think there's more savings there, but that's a longer term. That's not going to be fixed here. So, despite my fact that I think I'm an idiot for living in Florida, I'm hopeful about us. I'm sorry, I've been very winded. Stuart, do we need a caucus to put me in line?
No, just the muzzle.
That has been recommended by, if it wasn't for that lady, I would have
Actually, on the
known.
talking points, I mean, if I just had like certain things that I could,
I had one
Directly?
developed and I need to refresh it, and I'll be happy to pass that on to Stuart.
Thank you
Stuart
very
can pass
much.
that out.
Yeah, I've got one too.
Hey guys, listen, I really want to get out in the community and advocate. So if you have interest or an opportunity, I'll be happy to come to schools. I'll be happy to come to churches. I don't care. Wherever there's a building and a group of people, I will be happy to bring this in and talk about it. I got my own projector, got my own computer. So just let me know and I'll show up and do it. Honestly, I think the way, and I think the superintendent's right in her direction. I think the way that we start in getting some changes out there is get into our community and rightfully educate them on what's going on with the trends in funding education. With that being said, if y'all don't have any more questions for me, I'm going to go to the house. And just as long as you've got longer.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you very
Has anything
much.
been budgeted up to this point for salary increases across the board?
Unfortunately, our current budget has no increases built into it at this point in time. I would love to put some in there, but I don't know how to do it yet without shrinking the fund balance or having confirmation. We're looking, we're talking. We're talking higher than my level to some state people, to some people that have 1,000 years of experience in education. We're talking to them about some areas that we can look at. Look, I'll tell you the exact same thing that I told our board. I can find you $10 million tomorrow. I can't find you $1 more tomorrow without impacting education. So if I tell you raise your class sizes, obviously you guys are going to feel the pinch because now you got more kids in your classroom, and that's not what's best for our students' education. So can I come up with $10 million worth of cuts that don't impact education? I'm sorry, I haven't been able to do that yet. Wish to go. All right, well, I appreciate your time, I do. I know you've had a long day. If there's anything else, shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer emails. If you know of any place that you want me to speak at, garden clubs, women's clubs, men's, but I don't care. Just let me know.
How am I going to tell you?
Thank you very much.
I know that's a lot in a short amount of time, but very valuable. I thought it was important that Scott come in and provide some insight.
Before you run, and I get a lot of comments, people look at the board minutes and see lots of money being spent out of general fund. Yet when somebody asks it, well, we have, that was a restricted money that came from over here, but the board minutes say that it's coming out of general fund. So is there a lot of...
I will tell you in my short time being here that, a lot of times directors and people, they put things and they just, what's funds it coming out of? It's coming out of general. Well, general has restricted dollars in it too. A lot of those things in the categoricals they're separately accounted for in other projects. So it could be they're saying it's general fund and it is restricted general fund or non-restricted general. It depends. But sometimes, they may have, some of our departments have more than one budget. They got a federal and a general, or they have a capital and a general. And so sometimes there's some confusion going on between how they put that in there. But, the intent is always to try to use the restricted funds up as soon as possible so that you have more unrestricted funds for the future. But I'm sure that I could go back and find the case, or you could go back and find the case where, maybe the accuracy needed to be improved.
Yeah, we've talked to the superintendent about that at one point.
Are there some specific areas that you feel like we can look into?
Well, we brought up some early
Well,
on.
there's, all the, technology things, there were several of them on this month, on Monday night. So you have, Performance Matters of $200 and some odd thousand under general funds. You have, there's another one that was like, Skyward, $460 some thousand under general funds. Then you have all the overnight trips that are always some sort of money that are under general funds. We have school trips that are always under general funds. We have
Even some of the Google Chromebooks.
the maintenance has gotten a little bit better because some of the warehouse maintenance things. But this Monday night, there's another one that's on something that says, again, a pretty large amount under general funds.
Well, a lot of it, I mean, it
So,
is,
it's just-
because it's,
When it's just labeled as general funds, it's kind of,
So, and you
it
may,
was labeled maybe a little bit more or something.
So-
We wouldn't get all the calls either that
so
wanted like.
technically the term of general fund is all other funds that aren't restricted.
Well, it's a Fund 100, which is.
That's general fund. Fund
Yeah.
100 is general fund. So so it's not a federal project, it's not a capital outlay, and it's not a debt service. But there are things that are budgeted in the general fund that we know is going to be reimbursed by the capital fund. That's that capital outlay that we are allowed by statute to do. And the way that we do that per statute is we transfer in to cover those costs. But it has to be originally budgeted. So when you speak about those technology items, you speak about those fixed asset items that are done at the local level or the general fund level, they're put in the general fund, but there's, down at the bottom when you look at the transfer in, the capital fund is going to transfer in funds to cover those. So the cost is actually going to be eventually covered by the capital fund for some of those things that are allowed, but by statute, we have to budget them originally and spend them out of the general fund. I know it's confusing as all get out, but the intent there is we have to follow the statutes on these things and show that. Now, as far as trips and stuff like that, again, that's probably an area that accuracy could be improved a little bit. A school will say, or a principal or whomever will put that in, will say, we're paying for these trips out of general. And general could be internal accounts, it could be their school general account, it could be several things. But it's not a federal, it's not a capital, and it's not a debt service. So they just generally will use the term general. So, and I know it's hard to track sometimes. Anytime you have a question about those items though, I am always happy to try to explain it better. I might not be able to, but I'll try to explain it better.
well, there's some that just because they're general fund, there's still mandates that we have to meet and pay for some of those items that, come through. Whether it's something like a iReady or a Performance Matters and things that we're required to do by a district that has to be covered.
By the district or by the state?
Or by the state.
A lot of your capital outlay fund only allows you to report and expend what they call 600 object codes, which are your assets type stuff. So like when you lease a portable, it's okay to pay for that out of the capital program, but you can't report that in the capital program because there's no org number for leasing in the capital outlay fund. So it's leased in the general fund, but then the capital fund transfers funding to cover it. And that's what we do.
And I guess that's the number we're not seeing, so that teachers and communities say, well, they get raises out of general fund, but they're spending all of the general fund.
Right. And that could be an easy misconception. I agree with you.
And that's a hard one to explain.
It is.
Right. It is not easy to explain.
and couple that with politicians' promises, and even the constitutional phrase, the Department of Education argued that because we know we're not putting enough money in education, but it's the school district's fault because they're not spending it correctly. And the judge bought it
Oh, yay.
When I do my presentation to
because
community,
we sued on that.
when I do the presentation to community, I bring the book of statutes, and I had it at your school, and I show that to the crowd, and I say, you know, there's very few mays in here, there's a ton of shalls. So even though a lot of our funds are unrestricted, the statutes that we have to complete and we have to deal with and we have to ensure to the state that we're doing restrict a lot more of that funding than what. And year after year, we're getting more and more, which you guys know, we're getting more and more restrictions on how we do what we do, or what we shall do. We have to add this, we have to add that, you know, again and again. So it's death by 1,000 cuts.
Well, I mean, that's part of the intent too, but.
Okay, I probably spoke way more than I should. So,
There you go.
thank y'all very much, I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good evening. See y'all.
Well, we've got, probably got about 20 minutes here. I know we've been going for a long time. That's up to you guys if you need a break. I'd like to briefly update you on executive session. Essentially I sat with the board last week, and the superintendent and also Scott, and you know, I don't think they're super thrilled about our situation either. And a lot of the same questions that you guys, the board, have had, and they see all the same numbers that you guys see. And essentially, we're going back, like you said, we've reached up to some people that that helped us when we first got here to look for different cuts and different ways of looking at things. And we're working with those folks again. And your board's not ready to throw it in the towel yet, so we're still looking.
Good.
We're still turning over stones to see what we can come up with some reoccurring dollars. And your superintendent really refuses to give up. I don't know where we're going to wind up with that yet. So it's a work in progress, and that's all I can say to that at the moment. Like Scott just told you, at this point in time, in responsible budgeting, budgeting something that we don't have at the moment or discovered as reoccurring dollars available to have reoccurring expenses, that has not been done yet. But we're going to continue to look and see what we can figure out. I think there are some minds that are starting to open, and you know, where we can possibly set politics aside and unify as educators and people that are concerned about Lake County and the education going on in Lake County. So what I would encourage is, as the minds open on our board and in our administration, that you guys, you know, continue to think and try and figure out, you know, and present ideas also. And you know, the superintendent instructed me also to, if you guys have ideas or thoughts, please forward them our way also. Whether it's cuts or things that you think we can improve or spend differently, and we can cost them out and we can talk about them, and obviously we got to stay within the letter of the law. We got to meet all our mandates and requirements, and like Scott said, he can find money, but not money that's not going to affect kids at this point. And I don't think we want to, or you guys want to cheapen the product of education that we're providing our kids here in Lake County. So it's a big challenge, but I think unified and open sharing of ideas is what will get us there. So if you guys, I like that you're asking those questions. You know, why does all this say out of the general when, you know, is all this stuff necessary and required? So those are the things, if there's some specifics, you guys get specific and push them towards us. And, you know, we'll see it as it's could be a cost to you know, the quality of what we're doing in the classrooms or providing kids. It could be a cost to the level of support that we can provide from one area to different departments. Yeah, I mean, it could be a cost in many different directions, so.
I have an idea. We let Rob mow grass in other schools.
The mowing grass?
Gotta do what you gotta do.
I know, I compliment on that one.
Didn't
So,
have a custodian to do it, so I did.
hey, the fellow next door does a little bit of that too on his staff. You know, I just want to continue to express to you guys that we want to be transparent, and questions that you ask, we want to answer on record and provide explanations where we can and explore ideas where we can also. And I've got a thick folder with all the information on the compression salaries for veteran teachers. We're not abandoning that, and your board doesn't want to abandon it.
Well, they made some promises.
So we're trying to bail some water.
I just don't want to get into the conversation gaps that we had last year. It's
Right.
like, we want to talk about it. Now, I'm too underinformed. It sounds like there's no money right now. But, you know, going back, Kathy had a longer list last year.
Well, that becomes another question, is when are we actually gonna see a full budget?
Well, it's the trim process. Your budget's due, what's the September deadline for
I know
the
it's a
final
term process,
budget?
but
So-
usually by now we've had the entire budget available.
You just had the man here that you could have asked that question to that just walked out the door. So email him and say, when am I gonna see your closest to final version that you got? I can tell you right now, your tentative budget's pretty darn close to what you're looking at the moment until we find some other areas. There's not gonna be monumental shifts in that.
Well, I think Stuart's referring to like the big budget book that.
The big budget book,
You know, the big
yes.
book that, and we didn't even see
With
one
the
last year.
departments.
We didn't get like a department one, and we didn't see it.
Okay,
So
well,
it was like, so I don't know whether it's, and I think that's what
Yeah.
he's referring to,
I would recommend call Scott first thing in the morning and talk to him about it. So I can't speak to how he's planning on presenting those things. So.
because that's what I was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, 2 years ago, we got it from Diane,
Yeah,
and that's where we found, you know, and you had a great list, but there were things, right? And
Yes, yes.
we're gonna come across, one man's opinion, we're gonna come across an issue that is gonna be worth discussing. Some of the stuff on the list is the position here of the people that work in administration of, we have a right to have a say of what goes on in the classroom, which I'm not denying that, but that's where the dynamic tension is. So, I mean, just
well,
to use one
micromanaging is
example,
expensive.
yeah, one example is, you know, I have to have Skyward. I don't know if there's cheaper option, but I have to have Skyward because I gotta put in grades, I gotta keep attendance, I gotta sign in. I get all that. I missed the initial training for Performance Matters 2 years ago, and I've still managed to do a good job. Now, for all I know, elementary schools may be using it, right?
Would let it.
Yeah, you know, that's again is what makes sense in high school doesn't necessarily make sense in elementary and back and forth. So,
Well, we got high school folks. You guys speak.
no, I'm sure you use it. I'm just saying as one teacher who never got trained in it, I've still managed to, you know, pull out my numbers and such. So it hasn't added, it was supposed to take the place of something, and we could do our tests on it, but now it's gonna be Google whatever. I'm saying that Kathy came up with a list, and there were things on that list. The best example is Safari. 2 years ago, we all agreed it could go. It stayed on another year because of something about, I think, elementary or middle schools using it for their announcements, but we all knew that it could go. We know that Schoology, at least the paid part of Schoology, 100,000, as we understand it, can go. We were working on it for free at Lake Mineola long before, and the free part does everything we need. And as we evolve into, you know, Google Docs, there's probably in that book a very similar, well, it won't be broken out quite like that, but what Kathy did last time, that's where we pointed out to you the amount of money, the millions we were spending on subs. And the fact that, from our perspective, the coaches that were coming in for our new teachers wasn't the way to go. And we took that lift money, changed it to mentors. Now, I'll be honest with you, it got a very late start. That's nobody's fault, right? But now you know, because you just, basically got the input and stuff, and we're working the program. At least the mentors, I don't know.
And we still have an issue with the elementary substitutes.
Okay, yeah, that's another, retention issue. That's the canary in the coal mine. You think teachers leaving, you gotta see subs that don't want to work.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm rambling again. I apologize.
So nothing has been done about, making sure that we do have subs in those critical schools? Permanent subs?
We have people that, in some of the critical schools, we do have we've authorized authority for those folks to develop people that are coming in every day or routinely at those schools. Until we see, people are coming to work the first 2 weeks, but, our first reports will come in. So we'll look and see where we're impacted at.
Gotta think outside the box, from the legislature. You don't actually need a degree to be a sub, and we'll let you have a gun. and then you'll have a line out the door from our neighbors.
As
that
long as
want
you don't let the
subs.
first graders have access to your gun safe.
Well, in all fairness,
We're not gonna give them the bullets,
he
though.
did, yeah, that's true. That's true. So it's just a matter of who wants what.
But, we need to look at where we're going from here and set some dates. We're running on the
Pass
time.
you some sample language
Okay,
on best and brightest.
okay,
These are things that came from other counties, what they're doing. At least part of the money that is negotiable.
mhm,
So there is some language that we passed you on that. And then talked about recording in classrooms. And I know the superintendent's already said no recording in classrooms, but we just want to get it in contract. So we
okay,
have a paragraph there.
okay. So, do you think, when next session, I feel like we do need to look at reopeners for language and get some work done in the language area? Do you guys feel like that's a great, good goal for next session?
Yes.
And I can give updates on where we're at from a budget standpoint, but we do tackle some issues, so when we do figure it all out, we've at least gotten some things covered. So I'll take a look at the language you presented, best and brightest. We've done the preliminary runs on it to see who all's eligible, but the state is going to give us their list on who they deem to be eligible based on the three methods of calculation. So as soon as those match, and we have closed out evaluations for our for last school's teacher evaluations, probably looking at Guido shooting for the end of the month to finish those up. He's all the way almost completely through every level. He's at the last bit of high school trying to finish those out. So those are the two things we're waiting on for best and brightest.
So
Definitely.
we know that there will be funds left over after,
Yes, sir.
and that's what that is addressing.
Yes, sir. So we'll, this is last time I was asking you guys for some position on this, so I appreciate that. And so that'll give us some guidance, and hopefully we'll have best and brightest ready to rock as soon as they give us our list and we can agree on the way it needs to go out. I want you guys to have as much freedom and flexibility with that bottom pot as we possibly can. So we'll definitely have a lot more to talk about the best and brightest next time. We'll set a date?
And then after we get dates, if my folks can stay for a few minutes.
Okay.
And just as an FYI,
Mhm.
the last 2 years on this date is when we finalize contracts. Just to let you know.
Not the last 2 years, because we didn't finalize 1 year.
Well, last year and the year before.
And I've got,
It was the same day as my eye appointment, so.
I want to hand this out. I know we don't, just for you, for people to take, and so you have a historical background. This is kind of a compensation history. You can take it with you and take a look at it, and it kind of shows what's been done through the years. And it has every date for the past 10 years of ratification, of TA ratification, and board approval. So I figured just as a historical document, because obviously not all of us have been here forever, so
I don't have the dates, but I've been here.
Second Rob's been here the whole time.
Haven't been on work the whole time, but.
30 years.
I've got SEIU next week, but
Now, you're right, that we're talking about possible openers next week. Is that
Yes.
Understood?
yes, possible language openers next meeting. Sure, what Wednesday are you looking, Wednesdays make sense for everybody, correct? Like usual?
Mama from the snow meeting next Wednesday.
Yeah, but she doesn't have any control over this one.
What works for you guys?
Mm-hmm. 11.
The 11th works well for me.
As long as there's no new teacher orientations. Yeah, 11 would be the problem there.
I know I have a staff
CLC, we can,
I mean, as long as we're out of here by now, then
yeah,
we
by
can.
6, we can make that.
And it'll be at you guys' place next time.
Mhm.
So September 11th?
Yes.
9/11, yay.
3:30.
Mm.
Yes. 3:30 work for everyone?
Yes.
Tracy, you're always
She's always difficult.
I know.
So the problem is we've scheduled a lot of night, like curriculum things on Wednesdays because it's easier for teachers to get there that start at 4 from 4 to 6. Because it's easier for teachers to get there that day, so that's the problem.
And I will have some too, but I didn't go around.
What about,
But I'm okay on the 11th.
I mean, I have no problem with, if it helps, being on Thursdays.
Are you the only one, Tracy?
No, I can't.
You can
I
either?
have the therapist.
What about the 12th, on Thursday?
Be careful with that check, 'cause we got
Yeah,
JP.
what?
Yeah, you're gonna do a lot of
Yeah.
open houses and that JV
Bless you.
days.
12 would be
Yeah.
possible.
Now, see, then you're gonna
Then
have.
now
open
I've got-
houses.
Well, we gotta kick the RRT out by 2, so.
What about the 10th, if we went Tuesday before?
10th, I have to be in Moffitt. I could be in Tampa.
All
Take
right.
the corporate jet.
We have a board
Yeah.
meeting.
Let me go with you.
You wanna go to Moffitt with me?
I'll take you there if we go on the corporate jet.
We have board meeting on the 10th.
Oh,
Is
yes,
the
we
4th
do.
too soon? Is the 4th too soon? We didn't start any meetings until the next week.
I'm gonna be honest with you, coming out of SEIU next week,
Okay.
I've got to have a week to digest and get some work done for both units. Because when I go back to back, it doesn't give me any time to beg other people to pull the courses.
18th could be, 18th is good.
What
We
about
can't
the
do it
18th?
at all.
What about the
Then that's
18th?
the problem, then we can't do it
What's
at
the
all.
18th?
This is an easier drive here.
Evening.
Yeah, it's much easier.
I'm always happy to host, I just want to be fair to you guys. So.
The 18th?
Left,
I understand, that would change it because,
let's
I
let's
mean,
keep it the 11th for now.
As soon as they disappear. No, LCEA.
All right, let's go with the 11th,
For right now.
and I apologize.
It's never gonna be perfect. guys.
No.
No,
They're
Unfortunately.
always-
So 3:30 LCEA on the 11th.
Correct. Who's always
They were taking, she called it. They're taking